Regardless of the dubious legal strength of its case, SCO is making as much mileage as it can out of just the fear, uncertainty and doubt that it's generating. And so, like I've shown here, on the 12th of May, it wrote a letter to 1,500 of its customers just warning them about not only their use of the Linux kernel, but also other open source software. And then they wrote another more specific letter just a while ago on the 19th of December to a few hundred of its customers, notifying them not only of the initial problems, but there's some new header files that SCO has found that have supposedly been taken from BSD that they're complaining about as well. And on the 19th of November, SCO released a statement saying that it was going to actually broaden its legal onslaught to include users of this BSD code during the first half of 2004. But Linux and BSD-based operating systems aren't the only ones in SCO's firing line, because they also said back in June, well, they hinted that they might have the right to take action against publishers of other operating systems. Other operating systems, including Mac OS and Windows, because those were originally derived from Unix. Although last time I checked, Windows was still on sale, so you've got to wonder whether SCO's bark is worse than its bite hex. It's making so many bizarre threats and claims, and it hasn't really followed through on any of them. On the 19th of November, it claimed it was about to sue one major Linux customer for copyright infringement, and there's been some speculation that might have been Google, but nothing has actually happened so far. It's also made threats against some of its other competitors, including Novell. Novell, as you may know, is acquiring SUSE Linux, and that has been blocked or threatened to be blocked by SCO on the grounds that that's in contravention of a non-compete agreement between SCO and Novell. Anyway, but again, nothing's happened so far. So SCO has been making lots of noise, but on the other hand, its competitors haven't actually been completely silent. They've begun to hit back. On the 4th of August, as I've got up here, Red Hat sued for a declaration that there was no copyright infringement in Red Hat Linux from any SCO source code. And there's also been a countersuit from IBM a couple of days later, and IBM and Hewlett-Packard have also taken the initiative of offering a limited indemnity to Linux users against claims of intellectual property infringement by SCO. So there's been, people haven't taken it lying down. I mean, there is a bit of a defence going on there. So where are we now in the litigation process? Well, the most recent development was where IBM obtained a court order on the 5th of December requiring SCO to produce the code that it says is infringing by the 11th of January. Now, you may have noticed that the 11th of January was about 4 days ago. We don't actually, supposedly they've mostly complied. We haven't seen what they've complied, the documents that they've produced. Hopefully we will see those on the 23rd of January 2004. So that's not too long to wait. But that's where we are at the moment. Meanwhile, Australia hasn't been completely immune from the effects of the litigation. What we have had in Australia is Kieran O'Shaughnessy, who's the local head of SCO, is currently, this very week, he's in London finalising the terms on which they're going to offer licenses to Linux users for SCO's supposed intellectual property. Just as a ballpark, in the United States, the amounts they're asking about $900 per server and about $250 those Australian dollars per desktop. So he's probably going to be coming back to Australia, and you can't actually buy a license now if you wanted to, so which is very strange. But hopefully, or not hopefully, but when he comes back from London, that's going to be coming in place in Australia pretty soon. Also, Open Source Victoria, as I've said, there have made a complaint to the ACCC about SCO's conduct. That hasn't actually resulted in a formal investigation yet, but that will be interesting to see what happens. So that's pretty much the state of play. So if we can just backtrack a little now and look at exactly what it is that SCO is claiming that IBM has done. Basically, SCO is claiming that IBM has used either the Unix source code or else its knowledge about Unix that it's developed in working on the source code. It's used that in Linux, and in doing so, it has breached its contracts with SCO. Because remember how IBM and SCO have got a contract because IBM has licensed Unix for use in AIX. So that's what basically being claimed against IBM. And the PowerPoint slides notwithstanding, it's not just the little bits of code that have been cut and pasted that SCO is complaining about. SCO is also saying that IBM has used the knowledge and expertise that it obtained from the Unix kernel sources in developing similar technologies for Linux. And some of these technologies, the ones I've listed up there, we've got scalability and performance and scheduling improvements, a journaling file system, which is JFS, volume management, clustering, 32-bit and 64-bit support, stuff like that. Now, many of these weren't actually part of the original Unix code that IBM licensed, but were developed subsequently. And some of them, in fact, were even developed by IBM subsequently, such as JFS, which is the journaling file system, the IBM journaling file system. And so SCO's argument there is that it can still prevent IBM from introducing these technologies into Linux because they're works that were derived from the Unix source code, even if they weren't part of it when IBM licensed it from SCO. And so SCO's saying that IBM's breaches of contract entitle SCO to terminate IBM's license for AIX, and in fact SCO says that it has terminated the license. It claimed to have done that on the 16th of June 2003, which IBM of course denies. But frankly, the contractual part of this dispute is of less interest to us because the contracts between the two of them are complex and they don't really relate to the rest of us out here in the community. What we're more interested in is whether IBM has actually breached any intellectual property rights in Unix, regardless of contract. So has IBM actually breached any copyright? Has IBM breached any patents or trade secrets? That's more general application to the open source community. And in SCO's original court complaint, SCO did actually say that IBM had breached SCO's intellectual property rights in Unix, independently of the contracts. But that part of SCO's claim was thrown into doubt because Novell came up with a document that said, look, we never actually gave you any copyrights over Unix, and then SCO came back with an amendment to that contract from 1996 saying, yes, you did, look, you amended this, you gave us... so there's a dispute over whether there is actually any copyright that SCO owns over Unix source code, and there's a question mark over how many patents it's got, because there were some original patents that probably were part of this package of rights that SCO purchased, but most of them have expired, and some of the others aren't actually in SCO's name, they're in other people's names, so... There's a question mark over that, and as a result, we're not going to necessarily get a clear answer from the SCO versus IBM case as to whether there's been a breach of intellectual property rights. We're just going to get an answer about whether IBM has breached its contract with SCO, which, like I say, is less interesting. But it is important for us to look at the intellectual property rights question because of the fact that SCO has been making threats against other people in the community. Like if it does go and sue Google or someone like that, it's not going to be because of any contract between SCO and Google. It's going to be because of copyright or patents or something like that. So that's why it's still important for us to look at those things.